Good evening, everybody. This is Alex Books, and this is my co-host, Roger Sutherland, with our Gear Locker, and this is episode number 5. And I'm pleased to have my brother here, Sammy from Goatwhore, as our guest tonight.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Good to meet you.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just start off. Basically, we'll just start off the interview. Usually, just asking about, how, how you got into music, and was there a moment when you were like, "I'm going to be a fucking guitar player"?
How I got into music, it's like my family weren't necessarily musicians, so to speak, but I was always surrounded by music my whole life. My dad would listen to he loved James Brown. So we always listening to like James Brown on Sunday while he's cooking and stuff. And it was just music was a big part of my upbringing. It was like constant. My parents were constantly listening to music all the time. So that was a big part of my childhood. But my uncle, who was an enormous pothead, was also into music.
I had one of those.
And he had all these he was more of the hippie type guy. How can I say this? He the more undesirable type. And he was all into like Jethro Tull, and he turned me on to Black Sabbath and stuff like that. So it was like he was a cool uncle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I remember when I was really young, I saw the first Black Sabbath record in his room with the witch, with the house, real creepy picture. And it was a gatefold one, so the whole thing folded out and you see the woods and shit. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I remember I hadn't heard the record yet, but I saw that picture with the green witch chick or whatever, and it's like it's kind of scary. And he was like, I'd just pick it up and I'd look at it because at that time, like when I was really young, I was really getting to horror movies and stuff. So I was really intrigued by all this like morbid, horrific stuff, and I kept looking at the record. And then one day he's like, "You want to hear what it sounds like?" And I was like, the way he said it was like, I don't know, maybe. And he puts it on, and it has the rain and the bell and all that stuff and the thunder, and it was just when they hit the first fucking note, just that super distorted guitar and shit, it was just over. At that point, it was just like, this is where I need to be at. And he had a guitar that he never really played. I guess he got it in some kind of trade or something like that. And this was Electra. It was like this big hollow body monstrosity. It had Bigsby on it and everything. And I would just go and I would just make noise on it in his room. And every time I go over to his house, and in some kind of way, my dad either bought it from him or traded something for it and got the guitar for me. And that's when I realized that I should actually learn how to play this thing instead of just like rolling golf balls down the fretboard and making all kind of noise with it,
Right.
So at that point, my parents paid for me to have guitar lessons. And that's where it all started when I was probably around 9, 10 years old, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Did your, I don't know if your dad did this to you. I guess every dad does this. It's like, did he have some song he wanted you to learn how to play? Like, you got to learn this first.
No.
He didn't.
No.
I'm ashamed to admit mine. I swear to God, it was, Alex, I think I told you, House of the Rising Sun and dueling banjos. It wasn't a banjo, but it worked.
Right. No, my dad was just like,
buy me another guitar, so it was good.
Yeah. But basically my dad was just like, as long as it keeps him quiet, gets him out of my hair, everything will be fine.
There you go.
So, how about some of your I know Acid Bath is probably one of your earliest bands, but was there anything before, prior to Acid Bath, like first band that you're in, or was it Acid Bath your first?
No, man. Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. I was in several terrible bands before Acid Bath, because where I grew up in Galliano, Louisiana, it's about 2 hours south of New Orleans. It's not a
Uh,
real big town. There's not a whole lot of shit to do there. So there was a small group of people that actually, well, I wouldn't go as far as to say we knew how to play. We thought we knew how to play. So we would just switch out. Somebody would get pissed off at somebody for some reason, or that band would break up, and then we'd start another band with like one other dude from across town. It was several different shitty bands I was in before Acid Bath actually started.
yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like my story.
Yeah, it
You
was
know?
just a really bad cover bullshit bands,
Yeah, but that's also there's a magic to that too, because when you first start doing that kind of shit, you're just like, oh man, I can do this. That's that magic moment too. At least I don't know if that was it for you, but when I think back to not being able to play very well or whatever,
Oh yeah.
there's something special about that, those beginnings.
Yeah, it's like I could actually make this kind of sound like a Judas Priest riff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's close enough. I know it's not right, but it's close enough.
Yeah.
yeah. Totally, totally. Um, well, which is cool is you're actually the first guy I've had on the show that's a fellow ESP player. So I'd like to kind of ask you how you got into ESP guitars, and I want you to talk about the signature guitar that you got. And it seems to be doing really well. I see a lot of guys playing that guitar, and it's a fucking weapon, that thing. I'll tell you, that's a date. Me and Roger were talking about it before he came on, and I was telling him, I said, well, I started off with an Explorer when I was a kid, and then I played an Ibanez X Series. I said, which is similar shape, but not like what Sammy's playing. What Sammy's playing is you actually fucking really hurt somebody with that.
That's the point.
You know?
But well, I started with ESP. Fuck, man, this is like the mid to early '80s, and I would always see pictures of them in magazines, but I never physically saw one. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I would be like, what? I was really big into like BC Riches, of course. I was really big into the Jacksons, the Charvels, the Kramers,
Mhm.
and the ESP was always that kind of like that mythical beast that you only hear about, but you never actually see it manifest itself in front of you.
Right.
So I mean, there were no real ESP dealers. I don't even think at the time in the state of Louisiana, to be honest with you. So for a long time, it was just like all me and my guitar playing friends were just like, man, it'd be really cool to get an ESP or actually play one. But it was like this this magical instrument. You know what I'm saying? It's like you couldn't find it, but you saw it everywhere.
Right.
Then finally, there was a guy that was working at a store out in New Orleans that started dealing with them and started getting like some super badass ones. And that's when I first actually saw the first one that I actually saw. It was what was it? It was the M2 or the M1, but it was black and it had a reverse headstock on it, and it was a deck through body one. And I was like, I picked it up and I played it, and I was like, this is all the hype is real, because I mean, this guy's shop that he had the ESP that he started carrying, like he had like custom shop BC Riches in there and like all the fancy stuff. You know what I'm saying? There was very very few uh lower price guitars. It was all like gold logo Charvels, Jackson USAs, the Kramer Americans, and he finally got the ESPs in there, and we're like, it was all guitars that we could never afford at the time, of course, but we would just go in there and play them, and he'd be looking at us, making sure we weren't fucking fucking them up or anything. But that was the first ESP I actually played, and I was like, man, this guitar is pretty badass. But of course, at the time, I didn't have enough money to buy one and all that stuff. So, but it always stuck in my mind that the guitar was sick, and every time I would see one, I would pick it up and play it like in a random story. Like when you were mentioning Acid Bath, when we were on tour with Acid Bath, I went into a store in New York City that had they had like 7 like custom shop ESPs in the store. I forget the name of the store. Somewhere, I want to say it was in Manhattan.
48th Street?
I'm pretty sure that was it. But the guitar, they had some sick guitars in there. And I went there and was just playing. I'm just like, man. But of course, at the time, I couldn't afford anything that they wanted for them. But that was my first experiences with ESP, were like the really old ones, like from the mid 80s to the early 90s ones. And what had happened with my relationship with them, at the time I was endorsing another brand, and it was not really a super tight endorsement. It's kind of just like a handshake and all good, no contract, anything like that. But I remember they had released the NV2, the one with the Kaler and the iron crosses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that guitar.
Yeah. So they had just released that guitar, and I saw it, and I was like, man, I've got to get one of those. So I contacted our manager at the time, and he had known a guy that was working at ESP. And I was like, hey, man, can you contact your friend and see if he can get me like an artist discount on one? I'll pay for it, but I don't want to pay fucking $2,500 for a fucking guitar.
Yeah.
Right. So he contacts the guy, and he's like, well, if you want a couple of them, you could sign on with ESP right now. They'll pick you up. So that's when I signed on with them, with ESP, and that was like maybe 2008, somewhere around there.
Right.
And they sent me 2 of those guitars, and I've been happy ever since.
Wow, that's a cool story. Not to sound all sappy, but it's really cool when you go from like, man, I wish I could afford one of those to I have one with my name on it now, a signature series. So how does that happen? How do you get your signature series?
Oh man. So after I'd been with ESP for about maybe 2 or 3 years, something like that, I had seen a guitar in Japan. We went to play in Japan, and I saw it was called the RS320, which essentially is exact same body shape as mine. I changed it just a little bit, but it had this weird headstock on it. So a couple of years in my relationship with ESP, I was like, hey, can you guys make a custom shop version of this guitar for me? But I don't want it with this ugly headstock. I want it with a reversed ESP 6-in-line headstock. And the guy who I was working with at the time, who shall remain nameless at ESP for his sake, he was at a show we had played in LA, and I kept busting his balls. I was like, man, I really want one of these fucking custom shop ones. What will it take for me to get one of these? And he's like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. So say, follow me. So we go to the bar. We get him a shot of Jaeger. He takes a shot of Jaeger. Say, what will it take for me to get one of these ESP custom shops? Still giving me a hard time.
I'm gonna drunk it out of you.
About 5 shots in, he says, call me tomorrow, we'll talk about it.
Nice.
And I called him the next day, and he goes, he answers the phone, and he goes, fuck. And I'll say, what's fuck? What the fuck? He's like, well, number 1, I'm hungover as shit. And number 2, I agreed to get a fucking custom shop for you, didn't I? I was like, yep, you did. So let's get this shit lined out.
Is that the one with the crackle finish one?
No, it was It was a black one. It had the sigil of Lucifer from like the 11th to the 13th fret.
Yeah.
It had a single coil in the neck and a humbucker in the bridge. And
Right.
yeah, it was a real stripped out one.
So when you get to do sorry, Alex, I have questions this time. So when you get like when you start going through this process, like how involved are you with that? I've always wondered that.
Extreme, like when I'm specking out a custom.
No. Like when you get your artist model, like how involved is it? Just them saying, "Hey, what do you think?" Can you make something? And they make it and they put your name on it, or are you sent down with them going like, "I want it like this." I did see you were talking to somebody and you said you didn't like the neck carve on it because you couldn't get as high up on the frets and things like that.
Yeah.
But I know those kind of things. But like, are you intimately involved? Like, I want it to be exactly like this.
Yes.
Like, they're engineering it.
Yes, I gave them. They have all my specs from all the custom shops that I ordered, and I was like, they're essentially all the same thing. Like as far as like the neck, like the scale length, the frets, the neck radius, everything like that are essentially all the same. So I was like, take all that and apply that to the LTD model.
Nice.
So basically, they're making all the specs of my custom shop in a cheaper model, basically.
Right. That's cool. So that is like your guitar.
Yes, trust me.
Out by you. Nice.
Yes, I was very how could I say it? I was very involved and very pressuring on them to get it fucking right.
Yeah.
Because it would have been. I mean, if it would have came out, it wouldn't have been like exactly what I wanted. I would have been like, well, what's the fucking point of this? You know?
Yeah.
So I worked with them pretty closely to make sure everything was fucking perfect on it, you know?
Right. Have you been out anywhere and like seen like a young performer using one of them?
Actually, I went and I was going to see Exciter, the band from Canada, the old heavy metal band, and the guitarist Daniel was playing one on stage.
Nice.
And I was like, this fucking dude, what the fuck? Because I've been knowing Daniel for a while, and apparently he had just gotten it like a couple of days prior to that gig.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. And there was a couple of times in the last couple of tours that we did where some of the local bands opening up had the guitar.
Right. That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But what's really cool is actually, when was it? It was earlier last week. I believe it was like Thursday or Friday of last week. There's a music store that's literally, this is the music store that I shop at. Like, it's like right down the street from where I live. They just got 4 of them.
Nice.
So I'm like the king of the neighborhood now because they have 4 of my signatures in the music store down the street.
Do you like walk up in there and go like, that's me?
I haven't gone in there yet, but they sent like a receipt because I know the owner really good.
Yeah.
And they sent the receipt and it's like, look what I just got. And it's like had the order thing or whatever that said they have 4 of them in stock. I was like, holy shit, I'm going to come in there and check them out and hang out.
Oh my God. You should get them to just like set one out as a display and like set next to it.
Just see who notices it.
People see if they like put 2 and 2 together, you know?
I mean, that's not a bad idea. I might have to try that.
I have all kinds of dumb ideas. Ask Alex.
That's all right.
So how did you come to the spec of the guitar? Because I know you have like I think it's like a 24 3/4 scale.
Yeah, it's
on the
Gibson.
neck. And yeah, exactly. So I was gonna say, is that like just from years of different guitars that you played that you're just like, you know what, I like this, this, and this, and you know, this is what works for me.
Yes, that's exactly, because I like it for 2 reasons. Because my hands are so small that like the tighter the fretboard I'm more comfortable with, especially like when you're doing solos and shit. Like if you're doing like a super stretch, I can do actually the super stretches without having to work so hard. And I like the way the strings feel, to where it's a little bit slinkier, kind of, but you can bend the shit out of it, but it's still kind of stiff. So it's, you know, and plus, you know, I played Gibsons for like when I first started learning how to play guitar, and I always loved like Gibson Bs and Explorers. So I just was like, this just kind of make it a modern version of that. That's where the way it feels anyway, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you're using Seymour Duncans too, right? Isn't that
Yes.
pickup
Oh
set?
yeah.
Are they passive or active?
No,
That
they're
you're
active.
using?
They're active.
Active.
Yeah.
So it's like a blackout or something like that. Like that
It's
kind
the
of.
black. Yeah, it's a blackout metal. Because there's like there's a regular blackout, and then there's a guy from Slipknot's blackout, and then there's this thing, and
Right.
this thing is it's something else. Like you could plug it into like a Fender Twin, set really clean, and it'll distort the Fender Twin.
Wow.
Like
Nice.
it's an extremely loud pickup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've been
Awesome.
using them, and I really like them, you know, because I was using the Randall amps for a long time, and it's not those amps aren't really like a super high gain amp, you know, compared to like a 5150 or EVH or something like that,
Yeah.
or a rectifier even. They're nowhere near as gainy as those amps, so you kind of need a pickup to like really push the front end to get a heavier sound out of it.
Yeah.
But like if you plug that pickup in, like I said, into a rectifier or EVH or something like that, it's just out of control too much, man.
Yeah. It's funny how you say about the gain on the Randall being less than like a 5150 or something like that. Over the years, for me at least, the gain has gotten less and less over the years. And I realized that, especially if you go back in the 80s, I'm sure it was the same for you. You just, you got distortion pedal turned all the way up and everything's just fucking on 12, and you think it's the heaviest thing in the world, but really tone is in the hands, that's what I've found out over the years. And, but it's funny how you say that. It's just like, well, I got this super hot pickup and then I got this lower gain amp, and you're kind of finding that balance, I guess, that makes it work. But is that's do you use a lot of gain, or you kind of cut back on the gain?
I'm not a big fan. I've come to be so used to that pickup now that actually I really don't like using it with high gain amps. Like I like using it with either like a Marshall JCM 800 or those old Randalls, like something like that, or an old JMP, something like that, to where it with a normal pickup, it would sound like Danzig's first record, where it's distorted, but but it's not quite there.
Right.
Game over, salt or something.
Yeah, I'd rather use an amp. I'd rather use an amp like that than let that pickup just crush the front end of the amp, because I know we went to Europe a couple of times and I got stuck having to use like a higher gain amp, and it just didn't work with that pickup, and I just had to fucking even if I back the gain way off on those amps, there's something in the preamp section it's still not right with that pickup.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, man, we have to get a fucking 800 or something in here because this amp sounds like fucking shit with this pickup,
Yeah.
Oh, geez. And you have a pedal also, right? I
Yeah.
saw Ola, and that was a good review he did of your pedal.
Yeah, it was, and it came out of nowhere because he didn't I don't know how he got the pedal. I guess somebody sent it to him, and it wasn't me, and it wasn't the guy that made it.
Yeah.
So I guess like some fan bought one and sent it to him.
Right.
But like he didn't let anybody know anything. And like I woke up one morning, I guess the morning that he released the review, and I have a bunch of text messages and a bunch of emails saying, "Did you see this yet?" And I'm like, "What?" And it was like, Ola's reviewing your pedal. I'm like, holy shit, really?
Yeah. It was good. I like when he hits that middle knob, and what's he called? This is like the dime bag knob or something.
the Exodus knob or whatever.
Oh yeah, it sounded good though.
Yeah, it's that knob does a weird thing that I can't explain. The guy that made it knows what it does. I don't know what it does exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a mid-range boost.
Yeah.
But it's doing something else that's pretty awesome that I can't still he won't tell me what it's doing, but it's I can't explain it.
You know, when I watch the review, it's weird. What's that?
It's got the flux capacitor in there.
Capacitor,
It's
right?
possible that it's a flux capacitor in there.
It's a double flux capacitor. But I mean, it's funny when as soon as he turns that up, it's like your ear recognizes that sound, you know? It's like, wow. And then he says it, and you're like, damn, it's like he read my mind, but you could hear it.
Yeah, the guy, actually, I'll tell you a funny story about that pedal. And this is before the Bad Monkey debacle happened. Because I was using this for years and years and years. I was using a Digitech Bad Monkey as my overdrive, like a long time. And those pedals are fucking heavy as fuck. Like physically, the enclosure's like this. It's like a wah pedal. It's like this huge die-cast fucking thing. So what I contacted the guy that makes my pedals, Michael Klein, and I was like, can you like take the guts of this pedal and put it in a lighter box? And he's like, well, why don't we just design something straight, just completely new? So basically what he did was he cloned that pedal and then added shit that made it better. And that's that knob on it that does that thing.
Right.
So essentially it's a better Bad Monkey.
Damn. Yeah, it sounded good, that's for sure.
Yeah,
in his review of it was really good too. He did a good job with it.
Yeah, he must have been in a good mood that day or something, man. Because sometimes he like shits all over the fucking pedal. It's like, this thing sounds like everything else. Fuck it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he definitely didn't do it with that one. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was pretty stoked about that.
Yeah. So let's get to the I guess the new album, latest album, Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven. I love that title, by the way. That's sick. What were you using in the studio? What guitars, amps? Because I know for me, sometimes I use a lot of different shit than I, in the studio than I do live, as far as guitars and stuff.
Man, for all the rhythm stuff, I use the same shit I used on the last 3 records. There's that first ESP custom that I got that I was talking about earlier, and then my old Randall VMAX with my old Randall VMAX cabinets with a Digitech Bad Monkey. That was it. Because I mean, I think it was the 3rd record that we did with Rutan. It was a Constricting Rage of the Merciless. So we had a bigger budget to do that record, so we had a bunch of extra time to fuck around. So me and Rutan took like it was like fucking 4 to 5 days where we tried every rig you can imagine and every combination you could imagine. Like, he had a shitload of fucking amps in the studio. I brought a shitload of amps in the studio, and we just different heads. Let's try this head and that cabinet. And just for like fucking 4 to 5 days and just fucking around like that. And we would record a riff with it. Like, we would mic it up and we would record a snippet of a song. And every time we tried, you name an amp, we tried it. And every time we went back to the Randall cabinet and the Randall head. It was like, this just sounds the best out of all of them. So after that test, I was like, don't even fuck around. It works. Right. Just use it.
Yeah. I guess it depends on what you're doing too. It's like you're doing some kind of experimental project. It's like, all right, let me get all this stuff. But it's like when you guys have your own sound and you got your own guitar tone, and it's just like you're not gonna pull some Pink Floyd or something like that.
The only thing that I did in the last record that I didn't usually use was for the solos. I used one of those Omega Granifier heads.
Oh, okay.
And that through a Mesa Boogie cabinet, and that was just for the solo stuff. That was because the solo stuff I couldn't get Well, I wouldn't say I couldn't get the sound out of the Randall. It's just that mix of that Mesa Boogie with that Omega head just had that really good solo sound that I was looking for,
Yeah. Nice.
And that was it. It was all Randall with my ESP custom, the first one they made for me. Through all the rhythm tracks and on the lead tracks, I used a couple of different guitars, and of course all ESPs. And through the Omega and the Mesa on the solos, that was it.
Nice. What's the weight like on those guitars? Your custom shop guitars?
It's all different. Like some of them, the majority of them are pretty light. But I have this one that they made that has an arch top on it. And dude, I swear to God, this guitar is almost like 2 inches thick.
Right.
And now that bitch is heavy. Because it's like that body's like that fucking thick because it has the regular top, the regular body shape is about that thick, and then there's a top on top of it with the arch that's like the middle of the bitch is like fucking enormous,
Yeah.
But that motherfucker is heavy.
Do you like heavy guitars, or
No.
Yeah.
I like the way they sound, but
Me too.
when standing up with them ain't much fun.
So did you like heavy guitars when you were younger, and now you're kind of transitioning into lighter guitars?
When I was younger, I never really noticed, to be honest with you. I was just kind of like, let's go.
I guess when we were younger, we didn't notice a lot of shit.
Yeah.
About anything.
Yeah, it's like, come on, it's making noise. Let's go, man. Fucking heavy, light, who cares?
Yeah, I'm limiting that to music.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, heavier guitars, like for me in the studio, it's usually a heavier guitar. Like I'll use the ESP Eclipses. I have like the full thickness ones, and they're like 10 pounds or whatever,
Yeah.
They sound monstrous, but I can't play on stage with that fucking thing. That thing will it'll destroy my career,
Oh yeah. So, yeah, you gotta, if you played on stage, if you having to wear like a fucking back brace and some knee braces and a shoulder brace. Yeah. They had one, was the last time I went to the ESP factory, but the time before. And I was just fucking around over there, and I went into the USA custom shop. And they had the Eclipse that was one of the most beautiful guitars I've ever seen in my life. Like was like it had this fucking flame top on it, and it was like this tobacco sunburst, but the top on it looked like you could reach in and grab it.
Wow.
And that bitch was heavy too, though.
Yeah.
Because I picked it up, I was like, man. And they're like, no, you can't have one because we know you're not gonna play the bitch on stage. And I was like, fuck. But that guitar was heavy as shit.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Tony sent me, 2 guitars that they're too heavy for me to play. And every time I see him, he's like, got that guitar? I'm like, nope. It's like, it's too fucking heavy for me. It's going to destroy my fucking shoulder, but it's fucking great, but thank you.
Yeah.
We were talking about ESP and LTD earlier, man. They're just really making some solid shit nowadays.
Yeah. And the LTDs, the top of the line LTDs are incredible guitars. And, when you think back to when we were kids in the 80s playing guitar, you couldn't get a lower end mass produced instrument that was made that way, the quality.
No, it was all garbage back then.
Yeah.
I mean, you would buy, back then you're spending a lot of money, like let's say $250 on a guitar, and it was just not a good guitar, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, man, I'd had so many fucking Hondos when I was a kid, and it was just there was always something fucking wrong with them. It was just the guitars back then were just terrible, man. Like some of them, like
frets and
horrible.
And it made you play better. It's like when you
because you had to have action that high and fucking cutting up your hand and shit.
Yeah.
Motherfucking little kids today got it fucking easy, man.
Oh yeah, they
Bastards.
definitely do.
This little shit's got it easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
but the
well, and
LP,
that's good because it keeps them playing too.
Yeah.
yeah,
But that and I've seen man, I'm really surprised the amount of ESPs and LTDs that I'm seeing coming in nowadays. It just like that, just for setups, not for anything big. But man, I mean, the popularity seems to be taking off because I think people are figuring out they're like super solid guitars.
Yeah, man.
yeah,
I mean, for the price, even if
Yeah.
you get like even a lower end one, like the super least expensive ones, like the $300 or $400 ones,
Yeah.
even those are great,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
because
yeah.
I bought one for my wife's nephew that he wanted to learn how to play guitar.
Hmm.
So I bought one for his birthday. It was like $250,
Yeah.
and it was like the Viper one, but it was like a bolt-on, like the beginner entry level guitar.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there setting it up for him before I gave it to him, make sure it played right. And I was like, dude, there's nothing wrong with this guitar at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
that the one that Alex brought over on Saturday, that is one of the nicest ones I've seen come through. That thing was super solid. Like everything
yeah,
structurally, the way it was built, the workmanship, everything was good on it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're not.
I put that guitar up against any Gibson they're making nowadays, no doubt.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like I was explaining to Roger the other day. One of my friends was a couple of years back, and he got this Gibson Les Paul, and his guitar was fucking garbage, man. And the fucking frets were all fucked up, and everything was it sounded like shit. And I don't know what he paid for it, like $2,500 or whatever. But my LTD that are maybe $1,000 or $1,500 smokes that fucking guitar,
yeah,
and
man. I mean, even if you buy like a $2,500 Eclipse, you're getting a
oh,
monster guitar for that
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I got a
like
couple.
you're saying, even if you pay, if you buy a $1,500 LTD Eclipse, that's probably better than 90% of the fucking Les Pauls that they're putting out nowadays.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
And
it's sad to say an iconic company like Gibson, but they just don't have. I don't think they look at guitar building like ESP does. The ESP is
right.
constantly looking forward. How can we get better? How can we push forward as guitar builders? And I don't see that with a company like Gibson. They're just
Yeah, they're kind of just like a tried and true. This works. Fuck it.
Well, I think
yeah,
that and I'm a big fan of Gibson. I hate to bag on them, but that asshole did tell me years ago that they're supposed to have fret marks in their fretboard, which pissed me off, and I've never forgotten it. But I do like Gibsons, but I think they just kind of it's one of those things. They know people are going to keep buying them because it's Gibson, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a brand more than like if you're actually buying a badass guitar. It's not really
yeah,
a thing when you're buying Gibson. You're buying a Gibson
Right.
because it says Gibson on the headstock.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's true.
And what's funny is like they have all those Chinese makers that are ripping those guitars off that are actually they look exactly like a Gibson, but they play 1,000 times better than a fucking Gibson.
Oh, that what was it? Eastman. That Eastman that came in there. God, that thing was beautiful, and it was the what did I tell you? It was the third best Les Paul. Mine's the
oh
second
yeah,
best, but it
yeah,
was the
yeah.
third best, and it was it was an Eastman. It wasn't a Gibson, and it was super solid. It was all the Gibson specs, direct knockoff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame, they kind of just don't care.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
They
I
will
guess
one day.
they'll keep doing it as long as they can get away with it, because people are still going to buy them. So
Yeah, it's true.
you know,
Yeah.
well,
Well, that was
so
the
what do you
tag
what
on
do
the
you got?
Gibson segment.
What do you got coming up next, Sammy? What do you guys got going on?
Oh, I think we're gonna do some dates with I Hate God in Australia,
Oh, nice.
and then I think we're going to at the end of the year, like around December, we're going do a UK run with I Hate God as well.
Mhm.
But other than that, just kind of working on some new tunes. Waiting for another tour to pop up.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
When are y'all going back in the studio?
We don't have anything planned just yet.
Nothing
We're just
planned.
kind of loosely getting ideas for new songs up.
Right, right. I was telling while we were waiting for you to come on, I was talking to Alex about the name Goatwhore. Man, I love the story behind that. So I I haven't made too many fire department references, but I just finished up a career of 37 years in the fire service, and I swear, not today's fire service, but yesterday's, somebody in the fire station would have been a goat whore. That when I heard that story, I was like, "That's a straight up fire department story." That would have
That's
been
pretty
somebody's
funny.
nickname.
Yeah, just a little emphasis from a ugly ass stripper every now and then never hurt nobody.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it happens more often than not, fortunately.
Yeah, I looked that up. I had headphones on and busted out laughing. My wife looked over at me. I said, "Yeah, you don't want to know."
Oh man. Well, cool, man. I guess that'll be pretty much it. I guess. Anything you wanted to add, Roger, before we let
No.
you go?
I think I ended on a strong note with the goat whore, right? The
He
goat whore
did.
fire department reference.
Yeah. Well,
No,
man,
I was really looking forward to this, man. I knew this was going to be a blast.
yeah,
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, Sam. And
I appreciate you guys having me.
yeah, I love the new record, by the way. And it's funny because when I listen to you guys when you hear it's Goatwhore. You guys have got your own sound, but there's a lot of different influences. I think that I hear at least. Because I grew up with a lot of punk and stuff and hardcore. So it's kind of like it's like Discharge meets Celtic Frost, in certain ways. I don't know if that would be a good
I'll take I'll take that
description.
as I'll take that as a compliment. Yes.
Oh,
right.
and I mean that because that's two of my top bands right there.
Mine too.
You
Absolutely.
know,
Mine too.
but yeah, man. But thanks again for coming on the show, and hopefully we can have you on some other time. We plan on doing a lot of cool stuff and different topics on the show and stuff like that, and having multiple guests on. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
like to
we're
have
man.
trying
you
to
on.
keep it like conversational rather than just like a barrage of questions that you've already answered like 300 times.
Yeah,
I like the
yeah.
way you think, Roger.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. And you know what? I'll say this. I'm going to stop recording now because that was good.